Ladies and gentlemen, on the phone with us right now, direct from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, one of the most accomplished, most talented, and most well-traveled pro wrestlers of the last 20 years, who is now, even though he keeps his hand or foot in the ring when he wants to, is concentrating on training new talent, and he's becoming one of the premier trainers in the industry as well. Lance Storm is our guest on the program. Lance, how are you doing? Thank you for being a part of the Jim Cornette Experience.
Doing well and thrilled to be here. I've been a member of the Cult of Cornette since the late 80s when I first saw the Midnight Express. Been a fan of the Express and you as a wrestling fan, and then again I got to know you in '94 in Smoky Mountain, and been listening to the Experience since you debuted. So happy to be here.
And was that a pun? You're thrilled to be here because you're always seeking thrills. You know that.
There you go. I'm a wild and crazy guy.
You know, Jericho, somebody Twittered Jericho that they bought a Smoky Mountain program from me on my website that has the picture of you and him with the horse on the cover of it, and he retweeted it, and I sold like 15 copies of that thanks to that. So the only thing is I don't know where to send royalties to the horse.
That's the problem. I don't know if you remember or not, but when we did those Thrill Seeker videos in early '94 when we were coming in, when you told us we were going to go do some horse riding, Jericho was dead set against it. He was like, there's no way I'm riding a horse. I think he had flashbacks to when they wanted to make him a cowboy when he broke in. And he was dead set against it. He's like, no goddamn way I'm getting on a horse. And then when we got there and did it, we couldn't get him off the horse.
Yes, he fell
was so happy. He was having so much fun. You and I were ready to go with, like, we got other stuff to shoot. He's like, no, I'm just going to ride a little longer.
Well, you know, he at least he liked the horse better than the Velcro wall and feeding the bears. But we'll go into that later on because I wanted to start the program so we can tell the fun stories here in a little while. But starting the program because it's what everybody's talking about in wrestling over the past couple of weeks, and figured you get your take. You know both of these guys. You work with both these guys. What is your take on the uproar, the controversies, the various controversies surrounding CM Punk and Bryan Danielson?
I think in a lot of cases, fans are making a controversy where one really shouldn't exist. That there's this big uproar that, Daniel Bryan is being crapped on and not given the spot he deserves. And it's like, the dude's in the number 2 or number 3 spot. He's probably making more money than he's ever made before in his life. Life's not that bad for him. He's not the number 1 guy, but he's probably pretty damn happy. And fans seem to want to book the show, run the show, and if it's not exactly the way I want it, I'm going to scream and yell. And I don't think it accomplishes anything, really. There's the flashback of, the Office might dig in their heels with, you're not going to tell me how to run the show. Well, it's even, old school back in the day. If the crowd started chanting boring, most guys would just grab a hold and sit there. It's like, well, you want boring, dude, I'll give it to you. I'm calling this match. And
Johnny Valentine was noted for that. He would bore him right out of the building if they chanted boring. But, that's the thing. Like you said, Bryan is probably not that upset. Everybody's getting upset, but it shows there's 2 groups of wrestling fans. We've talked about this on the program. There's the group that's into wrestling and appreciates what the guys do and the talented guys and wants to see them work, and they spend money on the pay-per-views and they're more dedicated, more emotionally invested. And there's the vast, television audience now that they've created that just, they just want to see the stars fight each other, and they're kind of conditioned to, if anything, by The Office, what stars are supposed to look like. And that's why Bryan has broken the mold with that, and so many people are getting behind him as an underdog. And I'm always in favor of the underdog. I think, of course, you can shit on the underdog's head and not give him a super energy pill for so long that finally they won't care. Do you think the people are there yet, or is it just making them care more?
I don't think they're there yet. They actually jumped. They got past that point with me with about the I think it was like the 2nd or 3rd pay-per-view with Randy Orton, where they laid him out on, I think, 8 straight television shows.
Yeah.
That I'm like, okay, you're really hurting this guy now. But I think also too, there's the loyal wrestling fans that have been watching wrestling forever. They love wrestling and they love Daniel Bryan. That they're never going anywhere. So sadly, they're not the ones that you cater to. you've got to keep the ones that are a little more fickle and will leave happy. So in that regard, I think fans don't necessarily understand the business end of it. It's trying to please as many people and get them into the building as you can. And if you're the one that's been buying tickets for 20 years and you're going to buy tickets for another 20 years, they don't worry about you, which is sad, but it's business.
Oh, well, what is it about wrestling that it engenders that kind of, from all of us, we've all done it, that kind of commitment and loyalty? It's the business, it's wrestling. It's like an abusive relationship. You don't want to end. You keep it'll get better, it'll get better. And sometimes it doesn't get better, but the fans will stick with it, and we stick with it. What have the things that you and I, as in the royal we, have done in the name of wrestling that was just ludicrous when you think about it afterwards?
It is. I think because it is such a unique art form, for lack of a different term, because there is the appeal of sport. There is the appeal of, just pure performance and show, whether you want to be a rock star, whether you want to be an actor, whether you want to be a Super Bowl ring wearer. It has all those elements, and there's so many creative directions you can go that it is such a tremendous art form and outlet for someone that's creative and wants to perform that I think from you and I, there's so much appeal there because there's just so many options and places you can go. So I think there's a lot of us that get addicted to it and do things that sane people wouldn't do. For a $50 payday that you drive 27 hours for, and you're working your friend and you beat the living shit out of each other, and you come back and it's like, that was so great. And if you sit back and think about it, it's like, what the hell did I just do? But it's such a great moment. Again, some idiots would jump off a 30-foot scaffold because they thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, I can't imagine who would do some fucking stupid thing like that. As a matter of fact, one thing I told when I blew my second knee, and I went into the doctor to get it checked out, and I was going to have it scoped and everything. They said, "How did you do it?" Well, actually, I did it kicking Ricky Morton. As I kicked him, I planted my left foot, and there was the boards were separated, and my foot got caught, and it snapped my ligament. So instead of telling them that I was kicking a friend in the balls, I just said I was kicking a ball with a friend. It was almost true, and that way my insurance would cover it. But but that's you go to these reunions, and guys are, you remember when I broke your leg in Cleveland? Yeah, it was it was great. It's addictive, and sometimes guys get wrapped up in it, and there's a guy that's been wrapped up in it for a long time, and maybe he's not so wrapped up now. CM Punk. And everybody's, going nuts over this. I think, why can't the guy just say, hey, you know what? I'm burnt. I'm tired. It's not fun right now. I'm going to go home. Why can't he say that and everybody not go crazy?
Yeah. I think some fans think that I supported you, you owe me, which I've never fed into. I don't know CM Punk really well, but whenever we were at shows, we always talked because we got along well. I could see him being in a similar boat to Jericho, in that I think they're both very goal-oriented, driven people, and they like the challenge. They like to defy the odds and reach a new goal. And I think Punk might be in the spot where he doesn't see any more upward mobility. It's like he's peaked. And when you don't have the reward of reaching that next challenge, you start looking at how much you hurt, how exhausting this traveling is, and how much money I'm making and whether I really need that money. And he might be at the point that, I'm really sore, I'm really tired, I'm not creatively challenged, there isn't any upward mobility, I need a break. And I know Jericho was like that he went from wrestling in front of 15,000 fans to playing in a band in front of 1,500. And he said he got more of a rush because he'd never played in front of 1,500 people in a band before. So there was more upward mobility with Fozzy, which is why he's taken a few of these hiatuses to try to reach new challenges and new goals. So maybe CM Punk just needs a break. And if the dude needs a break, let him have a break.
Well, exactly. That's the thing is, and also it's nice. You have to admit it's nice that one of the boys in that position can say, you know what, I'm going home. I've done it a few times. I've never been in his position. He's probably got more money in the federal government right now. But I've been comfortable enough to say, I'll be over here because I can't fucking take it anymore. I've been that way here recently until last 2012. So I can identify, but also, the added pressure of not only mental and travel and being on all the time and working and et cetera, but when your body is telling you, you've been doing this a long time and geez, give me a break here. At least as a manager and as a booker and as the other things that I've done, I never had a point in time where my body was telling me you need to go home and sit down. And so that's even an extra, consideration for it. So I'm proud of the guy. I think if he wants to go home, if I heard he said at a comic convention that you would know when he was done because you would never see him again. He'd buy a cabin in the middle of nowhere. And I really like that outlook.
And I think too, with the amount of tragedies we've seen in the business, and you've got a guy that's straight edge, it's like if his body's hurting and he's tired, it's like, and he's not going to be taking pain medication to tough his way through, it could be a really rough time and he needs a break. And we don't need people, pocketing 6 bottles of Vicodins that he can keep doing it because he feels like he owes it to the fans to be a tragedy in another 10 years. If the dude is physically tired and physically sore, then let the dude recharge his batteries. If he comes back, great. If he doesn't, let the man live his life.
And also, and the mental thing is just as big as Ernie Ladd said one time when we first went to Mid-South Wrestling. Bill Dundee was taking over as booker for Ernie Ladd, but Ernie was still there for the last few TVs before the change was made. And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, "Your brain is like a sponge. When it absorbs all the knowledge that it can, you must wring it out. I'm going to wring my brain out." And then he would go and he wouldn't book for a while, and then he'd feel like it again. And I think more people should have their heads wrung out in this business. That's just me, though. Lance, I was talking to you before we went on the air, when we were setting this up about the amount of Canadian talent that came into the business in the 90s. And you and Chris were very early, but then later on was followed by Edge and Christian. And just think about what wrestling would have been for the last 20 years without that influx of Canadian talent. And talk about some of the guys that you think from Canada really shone in the last 20 years, and also talk about the fact that you're keeping that tradition hopefully alive with your training center.
I think a lot of it was based off of, Stampede Wrestling. I think any place that produced talent, whether it be, Minneapolis way back when the AWA was strong, that you saw that great product and then people wanted to get into it. And again, I think Stampede was ahead of its time as far as bringing in, European talent and Japanese talent, and being a little more dynamic athletically. That there was a lot of people that saw that and got hooked on it. And, there was the Hearts, Bad News that came out of here, the British Bulldogs that came out of here, Brian Pillman. Now, they weren't Canadians, but they came out of here. But with all of that great talent, and following in the success that you saw with Brett and Owen, it inspired guys like Jericho and Benoit, Edge, Christian, Test, probably Trish Stratus to an extent. And again, you had the Rougeaus, you had, Bravo. There was a lot of talent that came out of here. And I think a lot of that is credited to, Stampede Wrestling giving us hey, I could be a Stampede Wrestling star. It gives you that first rung of a ladder to get in on. But the person I like to credit the most with the skill level is actually a guy by the name of Champagne Jerry Morrow, who is a, perennial Stampede veteran, a true journeyman workhorse. And the dude just loved working hard. He was a great ring psychologist. He had great timing. He knew how to break down a match and how to put it together. And he's the guy that taught me how to work. I went through the Hart camp and I was taught how to bump and how to execute moves. But Jerry Morrow was the guy that really showed me the light. And I know there's a lot of guys, Jericho and Benoit worked with him. Edge and Christian got to work with him. Just incredible. Trained up here with, I trained him in 92. He got to work with Jerry Morrow. And when you have that veteran that can just grab you by the hand and guide you through, it really shows you what's there. And I think that's what's missing in today, that on those lower levels, because there isn't the, the remnants of Stampede, the resonance of Memphis, the resonance, the those guys that were there that have the experience but are still around, where you can learn, where now a lot of times it's just a bunch of young guys. And they
we skipped a generation, didn't we? Where if there was a generation there that just got all the top guys got hot and either made millions and retired or got out of the business, and we skipped almost a generation of passing of the torch there, where you weren't riding in the car with that guy that had been in the business for 8 or 10 years and hearing, or in the locker room or in the ring with them and hearing that. It was a missing link in the chain.
Yeah, and I think it's almost there permanently now, unfortunately, because those who get to be really good make it to WWE, and they don't go back to working indies after, mostly. So you don't get that. There's a few occasions of it, and I've done a few matches sort of like that, and I think sort of trying to do that. Again, I think that was one of the reasons why I really enjoyed coming in and working with Mike Bennett when I did in Ring of Honor, which, again, you mastermind.
And that's actually what that was designed for, because we are missing that element of a top veteran coming in and working with a younger guy. And you did it in OVW here in Louisville. And for example, when Jericho came in and worked with Johnny Jeter, the junior thrill seeker, the guy that took your name, because it was a guy who was in the same position. Even when Glenn Jacobs, Kane would come down and work with Batista when he was in OVW or whatever, it was a guy that had been in that same position 10 years beforehand, with a similar style, similar look, etc., coming to give the hand up to the new guy. And that's how you perpetuate good quality talent in the business.
Yeah, and it's missing, sadly. And that's one of the reasons why, again, when I went to the Hart camp, it was 8 weeks, and you were pretty much just taught how to bump and sell, and off you go. And I really try to spend the last 4 weeks really hammering home ring psychology and what the business is actually supposed to be about. Getting more out of your match than just taking bumps and jumping off cages, trying to generate a legitimate emotional response, so that you might actually make a living before you're in a wheelchair, because you don't always get that knowledge on the indie scene anymore. So I try to give them as much of it as I can on their way out my door, in hopes that they can help pass it on to some others and make better grounds when they start.
Now, at the Storm Wrestling Academy, do you have ongoing classes, or is it a set schedule? Or explain, if anybody was interested within the sound of our voice, how would they contact you, and what would they be in for besides a severe ass kicking?
StormWrestlingAcademy.com is the way to go to find out information. I have 3 classes a year. Everyone starts the beginning of class. You do 12 weeks. We train 5 days a week. And then at the end of that, you're done, and you're supposed to go out and find indie bookings and get experience. I think there's a lot of people that train forever, and I don't think that's necessarily the best way. You've got to get out and bang doors. You've got to work in front of people. By the time you get done your 12 weeks with me, if you have any aptitude at all, you're ready to get out there and start applying your craft, getting on the job experience. And the main reason I like that schedule is what I was taught under. But also, too, it allows, because I get probably half of my classes at least are international students. So I can get people coming from the UK, Australia, South America, the US, where it's like they can buy a ticket, they come up for 3 months, they can do their training, and then they can go back home and apply their work. They don't have to move here and live here and stay here year-round. And you get a really good bonding experience when you have a class that everybody learns together. Jericho and I showed up, met each other the first day, trained for 2 months, and 24 years later, we're still friends. And I think that's great.
And there is, as you mentioned, a big difference between learning to do moves and bump and learning to work. It's a whole different thing. And sometimes that's forgotten these days. But let me ask you this, because I don't even know if the folks know, we've both of us have told a story before, but obviously never on this program. But I saw your videotape that you sent me in Knoxville quite a while after the fact that you actually sent it to me. Did I ever finally watch it? And that became a chase of trying to get a hold of you, and just incredible. PJ Walker was involved also. You were in Germany, wherever, some way I saw him at a WWF taping, and he had talked to you, and I kept fishing for you. But finally, I got you and Chris in 94. You guys have been working, for about 3 or 4 years at that point?
Yep.
But it never in this country. And Let me ask you, when did you learn, when you got to the United States and you saw the Smoky Mountain crowds? Because we've talked about it before, that you guys were in Japanese mode. You guys have been going back and forth to Japan. You had the Stampede Wrestling, that really kick-ass style, and all of a sudden you come down to Tennessee, and it's like they want what? and I had to calm you down a little bit. When did you really start feeling comfortable working different crowds and different in different areas, different parts of the world that wanted different stuff?
I think it happened fairly quickly. And I think I started feeling comfortable working different styles before I got to Smoky, but I just had no idea what the style I needed to work there right away. Because I'd worked in Europe, which is a completely different style. I'd worked in Japan, which was a lot faster style. I hadn't worked the Southern wrestling style yet. So it took me, a little while to sort of figure out what we were doing. But I found that it was a great learning experience, because I think I adapted better than Jericho did, because he was working Mexico and Japan junior heavyweight style, where I was at least coming off of Europe, which is a little bit more reasonable. And I found when we started the program with Well Done, Stephen Rex would be like, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. And Jericho would be like, speed up, speed up, speed up, speed up. And I was at least aware enough that, okay, we've got to find some middle ground. Jimmy brought us in here because we're supposed to be exciting, but we can't go 100 miles an hour, but we need to go faster than 10.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to try to...
And then also the first team you worked with, like you said, was Rex King and Steve Dunn. And even though they started, with Southern style in Tennessee, they had just come back from the WWE. So they were down around 8 to 10 miles an hour. And you guys were circling the track at 96. It was an interesting struggle. But at the same time, like you said, Chris, do you remember the awesome bump that I saw him take where we're at a spot show in front of 300 people, and he shoots the heel into the turnbuckle and he charges and the heel moves, and he dove over the turnbuckle, hit his head on the ring post, and took a bump straight to the floor in like Cumberland, Kentucky, in front of 300 people. Is the goddamnest thing I'd ever seen. I told him, I said, please don't ever do that again until I tell you to. He said, what? You didn't like it? I said, no. It's great. You're going to kill yourself. There's 300 people here. It's Cumberland, Kentucky. I had the same thing with Candido, keep him from diving over the top rope and hitting the gym floor, right? And I said, save that for the Coliseum when it's sold out and you get your juice that way, and my God, it'll tear the house down. And that's the bump I wanted him to take at the Night of Legends when he broke his arm. And he'd done it perfectly in front of 300 people. He couldn't do it at all in front of 5,000.
Yeah, and that really is the difference between knowing how to do moves and take bumps and really learning how to work. It's about when to do something, and the timing and making it matter. And we were just starting to figure that out. I don't think Jericho had it all yet, because he was in Mexico and Japanese mode, where at least I came back from Europe, so I knew where I wanted to be. I just hadn't figured out how to get there yet, and I was trying to find that when we were there. And again, the way, especially with Jericho's broken arm, it's never managed to completely dot all the I's and cross the T's as far as who I was as a performer yet.
But at the same time, we knew, I was saying we, like me, Bryan Hildebrand, the most of the guys that had been around the business knew that you guys were going to do something. You had the look, you had the physiques, you had the ability. That's what I first noticed about your videotape was not only your leaping ability and your gracefulness for your size and the flying stuff, but just athletically, is like the University of Louisville basketball coach, Denny Crum, used to say, I don't want guys that can play basketball. I want guys that can jump, because I can teach them how to play basketball. And you guys, everybody could see we're going to make an impact in wrestling, sooner or later. And you had to get comfortable with your promos too. And I remember sitting at Bryan Hildebrand's kitchen table, bless him, and you guys doing the interview where you were attacked by supposedly the heavenly bodies, and we were there for a while. And who would have thought poor Jericho? I'm sure he would like to buy all the copies of that and burn them. But now he seems like he's vaccinated with a phonograph needle, because he got that that confidence, and at least he was able to learn. And instead of being on WWE television speaking somebody else's lines, he was telling somebody else's story, but in his own words on a local television in East Tennessee first before he had to go worldwide. I think that's what hampers a lot of guys these days, is not only being exposed to a massive audience at the same time before you're ready for it, but also having to tell somebody to do somebody else's content, words, scripting, whatever.
Yeah, because, again, I was dreadful talking when I was in Smoky Mountain. Let's not kid ourselves. But I had to suck at some point, and it was in 94 with you. And then I went back to Europe and Japan and stuff and realized I needed to improve it. And then by the time I got to ECW 98, I was ready to learn and find myself. And then Paul helped me along, and I'd matured more, and then I started getting competent enough. I'd never say that I was, a great talker where, you're looking at the Bobby Heenans that can, really capture a crowd. But by the end, if you gave me something important to say, I could get it done. And, again, I'm not a rock, but it's like I could get it done. And it took a while.
Well,
and
but
like you say,
it fit you too. I mean, one of the great opening lines in wrestling is, "If I could be serious for a minute," and it fit people that knew you, and then it fit the people that had never met you or spoken to you before or heard you speak. Because once you made your delivery, that opening line was classic.
And I think too, I was so much better as a heel speaking that it just suited me better. And when I was young and greener, people saw this great athletic ability. Oh my God, we've got to make this guy a babyface. And it's when I really settled into being a good worker that, and again, it was in ECW when I was a better worker, that's like, hey, we could make this guy a heel and a ring general. And the fact that he can jump and do great stuff is a bonus, but he's a great worker. And then when I found myself as a heel performer, I found promos that fit me. And when we had to do the un-American stuff that was heavy and mean, and it's like I could do that. I'm just not the raw guy. And I had to find myself. And like you say, people don't have that ability to work Smoky Mountain TV, work ECW TV before you get to the dance. And it's a big jump.
And there's a big difference between experimenting with stuff that you accidentally discover works for you when you're working a small show or a smaller TV. There's a difference between doing that and playing around with that and figuring out what to keep and what not, and starting a gimmick that somebody's just handing you. Here's your gimmick. Oh, geez, well, I'm supposed to do what? And here's the way you should say these things. That's unfortunately why you see so many deer caught in the headlights, blank stares from, wrestlers reciting other people's lines, because it's not them. They don't believe it. There hasn't been that trial and error period of, blossoming as the gimmick should not be given to somebody. Somebody should be the gimmick. They should have it in them somewhere. And once it escapes, then you know what to do with them.
Yeah, I like to call it finding yourself. And I know this is something you've mentioned before, too. Even just when people go about my character, it drives me insane. It's like it should be a part of you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I never thought there was what would Jim Cornette's character do in this situation? I'd be like, Jim Cornette's going to blow a gasket and freak out. That's what Jim Cornette does. And I know it, again, you're not actually that mad at Ricky Morton, but it's like, in that moment, there's Jim Cornette. He's the rich mama's boy, and I know how he's going to react. It's not I wonder what his character is going to do, and it just drives me crazy. It's like, find yourself.
Yeah, well, that's, when anybody, and I hate that the whole character thing. I even wrote a column on it, a character study one time. When somebody, it just gives me the sour belches. What would my character say? I don't know. If this happened to you, what would you say about it? If this guy screwed you over, took your title, cost you money, hurt you physically, what would you say about it, motherfucker? Please, just come out with it. As Bullet Bob said one time, say it, man, just say it. It should be second nature. And we talked about on one of the other shows that we've done here lately. I've done so many of them, I can't keep track of which one, but we talked about the fact that a lot of guys these days don't know how to get themselves over away from television. How that when they're doing interviews with podcasts or, newsletters or radio or whatever, they don't speak of themselves as the stars that they should be. They almost take the storylines from TV to heart. And I'm scared for my job. The promoter tells me what to do, and I can't. they're almost living that new gimmick that somehow all the wrestlers are not stars. They're scared of where their next meal's coming from, and they don't want to piss off the authority. In my day, when the main event guys didn't give a fuck what the promoter thought, they were the fucking stars. They were the what everything revolved around. They were the authority. And they'd tell the promoter to kiss their ass and they'd go somewhere else. That's what the heels would do. And, so now it's almost like the guys are very meek on their personal appearances, and they don't go out of their way to attract attention to themselves, to stir up the populace, to sell to themselves. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I think, and this is in all walks of life, I think people are gravitated towards confidence. And if you believe in yourself and have the confidence, and to an extent don't give a damn what others think, that resonates with people. And you can go, wow, that guy's a confident guy. He's owning the room. But if you don't have that confidence and you're second-guessing what you say and you're looking a little sheepish, and that's the big thing that I harp with students, you get into the bulk of the match and I'm beating you up. It's like, if I don't believe you think you can beat me up, no one will. And I think that confidence, whether it be the I don't give a damn attitude, or whether it's just the I know I'm a star, I believe I'm a star, I'm important, it shows and people resonate. And that's how you get yourself over, is by showing that confidence that you believe you're again, whether it be better than him or above this, or you know what, I'm owning this room because I own this room, I'm important.
Well, I can't count the number of mornings in the 80s that I got up. It was like Groundhog Day, the movie, where we would have gotten in late the night before, and we would have gotten very little sleep, and we were up early in the morning to catch the first flight, and we'd drag our stuff, me and the Midnight Express, and I'm probably carrying the bag with the heavy belts at that point, and put everything in the overhead and sit down in our seats, and then we'd look up at the front of the plane, and right before they close the door, without fail, religiously, 2 minutes before that door is going to close, here comes Flair. And he's got a 3-piece suit on. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. He might not have slept yet. He's got a 3-piece suit on. He's got his Louis Vuitton bag. He's carrying the 10 pounds of gold in. He's brushing his hair with the other hand. And he comes on the plane and says, "Woo, who's going to the party?" It's 6 o'clock in the morning. We're all dead. But it was Flair, and everybody, whether they were wrestling fan, or just citizen, knew that Ric Flair was on that plane, and even if they didn't know who he was, they knew he was somebody.
Exactly.
And that's, it's like you said, it's confidence. Walking in to see, whether the place needs painting, looking down your nose at, on a much lesser note than Ric Flair, that's how star maker Bolin accomplishes the miracles he accomplishes around the city of Louisville, Kentucky, because he is so confident that he is going to talk somebody into giving him their money for very little compensation. And you had some dealings with Star Maker when you were coming up as a trainer for Ohio Valley Wrestling a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think that is the key to Kenny Bolin, is he doesn't go in hoping he's going to make a deal. He knows he's making a deal. He just has to figure out how to do it. And there's never a moment where he second guesses it. My great experience, the great Kenny Bolin, I think it was before one of the early TVs.
And I had to bring that up because you Twittered, you let the cat out of the bag last week on Twitter. By the way, what is your Twitter, Lance, again?
At Lance Storm.
At Lance Storm. You didn't even have to put the in like I did, but at Lance Storm, so everybody can follow you. But you Twittered and let the cat out of the bag that you, too, like everybody else in the industry, have a Star Maker Bolin story. So I wanted to get that in before we run out of time on the program.
Yes, I had the joys of being involved in I don't want to say a swindle or a con, but a production by Kenny Bolin. He had asked me if he brought a couple things to TV, would I be willing to sign them? I'm like, yeah, sure. If he's got a kid that wants a photo or something, I'll sign some stuff, no big deal. Well, he shows up at TV with about 3 grocery bags full of action figures. And he's like, I'm not going to sell these. These are for, people. I'm not making money off here. I just, if you could just sign them. And I'm like, okay, so I sign the, 24 action figures he's got or whatever. Well, the next TV rolls around. He's got 4 more grocery bags full of action figures that he insists he's not selling and making money on. And when I called him on it, he's like, well, just think of the royalties you're going to get. All these action figures that are being sold, your next royalty check's going to be great. I'm like, all right, Kenny. I guarantee you he got them from Walmart, probably on clearance, if he didn't name his own price, so your royalties might have been suspect on those too. Well, this is the best part. my royalty check came in. And if you haven't seen a WWE royalty check, it's itemized. It'll say action figures, DVDs. And I kid you not, after signing, I don't know how many grocery bags full of action figures for Mr. Kenny Bolin, my action figure net total was -2, and I had to give $1.50 back. I don't know how that happened, but Kenny Bolin got involved in my merchandise and my action figures, and I somehow had to pay back money.
Oh my God! I tell you, he offered Danny Davis one time. He wanted to do a deal with Ohio Valley Wrestling where he would get all Danny had to do is run the advertising. He would sell the advertising, and he would give Danny 30% of his own company's proceeds somehow. I can't remember exactly what, but somehow Danny was going to work out getting 30% of his own revenue. Kenny has that effect on people. He's become the most polarizing figure. Alice can testify to this. If Alice hadn't gone to sleep while we've been droning on.
Oh no, I'm here.
Yeah, you're always there. That Kenny Bolin is the most polarizing figure on MLW radio. People they say we've got to have Bolin on every show or we're going to riot, or if you ever have Kenny Bolin on again, we're not only canceling the VIP membership, but we're also going to poke our eardrums out so we can't hear it. You love him or you hate him.
But to not just throw, poor Kenny completely under the bus. Because I listened to both times when he was on your show, because I listen to your show all the time. He's part of what's missing from the business now. There's some of that. Again, he's not a gimmick. He's Kenny. And as a manager, it's like you can just look at him and go, this guy's got 1,000 irons in the fire. He's going to screw over my hero somehow. He's a con man. And he's so good at just talking and saying whatever. He doesn't need a script. He's going to find a way to convince you that he's, looking out for you. He's that indie manager that Territory's always had, that other people can learn to talk from and other people can learn having to talk against. And I think there's something to having that Kenny Bolin that's just the guy that has the gift of gab and the attempted influence. I think there's something missing in the business when you don't have that borderline swindler con man character.
Well, and it's just actually you can extrapolate from that anything that's believable. I want to believe that the guy is really the nature boy. I want to believe that the guy is really the con man. I want to believe that the guy is really the butcher or the monster. I want to what was the quote that you retweeted me? And it was my quote, and now I'm trying to come up with it again. Basically, people want to believe in shit they like. Was that basically it?
Yes.
People want to believe in shit they like, and we've taken that away from them. We've ruined a lot of their enjoyment just by telling them, "Oh, okay, we're doing this to yank your chain," and then conversely, we have lost the ability of how to teach a lot of these guys to do that because they don't come into the business now looking at it that way. When you came into the business years ago trying to be as real as you possibly could and get the reaction from the fans and from the ticket buyers that you wanted. And now everybody comes in not wanting to be real, wanting to be, for a better term, actors that are told how to portray what they're supposed to portray. And that's, unfortunately not as appealing on a visceral emotional level to somebody to just yank their attention and say, hey, I'm a dick, or hey, I'm a great guy, one or the other.
Yeah.
And boy, even the old Smoky Mountain fans, and you've seen a few of those, might not believe some of this stuff going on these days on television. And you could get them to believe a lot of things.
Oh God, I remember that one family in Barberville, Kentucky that, brought the video of them at their house. And there's a picture in the hallway, and there's like an 8x10 of Jesus, an 8x10 of Jesus, an 8x10 of Jesus, an 8x10 of the Rock and Roll Express, another 8x10 of Jesus. And it's like, they believed in those guys so much. And when Ricky sold, they cried. And, that's where, and again, they were at every show and bought every dumb, stupid thing the Rock and Roll Express sold at their table. And was that
the Crab Boys family?
Yes.
Yes.
That was the Strange Kentucky People, yes.
Alice, have you ever heard of the Crab Boy?
No, I haven't. Do tell.
We don't want to mention any names. Unfortunately, we don't know those names, so we can't mention them. But the family that Lance was speaking about, actually he gave it to Jericho, or he gave it to you guys both, or he gave a video of one of the tricks that he was doing to entertain his wrestling heroes was walking like a crab with his feet underneath him, and his shoulders were disjointed at an awkward angle, and he became known around the Smoky Mountain locker room as the Crab Boy.
There's actually a guy in WWE that's doing that right now. Bray Wyatt has occasionally crab walked in the ring.
I bet he didn't do it like the Crab Boy. I bet he didn't have the same flair as
that. I can't speak to. Maybe Lance could tell you, but
yeah, it was a wild and crazy video. They gave one to both Jericho and I, and there was the daughters loved us and the mom loved us, and they basically videotaped themselves in their house, talking about they named their dog Storm, and they were, this is my daughter, she ain't never been kissed, and here's Billy, and he's doing the crab walk, and then they, this is our house, this is the kitchen, and then you see the 15 pictures of Jesus on the wall and the 6 pictures of the Rock and Roll Express on the wall, and it was quite amazing.
But you know what? Once again, those people were there to support the Rock and Roll Express and to support the baby faces and to support their heroes, and don't mess with them, or you're going to get on the wrong side of that whole family. And that's the kind of emotional attachment that our business used to have. And as a matter of fact, were you there the night in Barberville when Tammy, Sonny, was managing Brian Lee, and one of those Barberville, Eastern Kentucky farm women snatched a hold of her, 2 handfuls of hair, and was dragging her across the basketball floor?
No.
It may have been right before you guys came in the territory, but Brian Lee had to jump out of the ring. The woman, she was as big as I was, if not bigger, grabbed a hold of Tammy and is pulling her across the floor by her hair and going to drag her out the back and beat her up. And Brian Lee jumps out of the ring and starts running and grabs Tammy's feet. Now they got a tug of war going on with Tammy. And the cops come up and they're trying to get this woman off. And you apply, force a little differently when it's a woman than when it's a guy. And so the male cops are trying to figure out how to get this woman off of Tammy. And Brian don't want to touch her because he's wanting to save Tammy, but he's not wanting a lawsuit. And Tammy's screaming, "Get her off of me!" And that was a tribute to Tammy. Instantly, pretty much had the ability to piss you off, and she applied it very well, and she took it seriously.
Yeah, and it is something that's sadly missing. And I think the real sad thing is there's a lot of fans that think you can either have emotion or you can do exciting spots. They don't realize that there can be a blend. You don't have to turn off logic and turn off believability just because you want to do a high spot. If we could find a middle ground of it still being some exciting action, but still letting those that want to suspend disbelief that they could, I think the industry as a whole would be far better off.
So let me ask, are you wrestling upcoming? You mentioned the matches you had, and I want to tell you right now in front of everybody and all the listeners, thank you for coming into Ring of Honor back in 2012 and having that 3-match series with Mike Bennett, because for the past several years, you have only wrestled when you want to, when it's either a place you want to work or a person you want to work with or something that you just didn't, some combination you didn't get to do and you want to. You've been picking your spots. Are you getting in the ring upcoming? Have you got anything scheduled, or are you taking it easy for the winter?
I'm taking it easy. I had a match in December. Danny Collins, a guy I worked with 20 years ago in Europe, was having a retirement and asked me to do his last match, so I went back and did that. But there's nothing on the horizon. I'm not looking. Doesn't mean if something interesting comes up, I wouldn't take it. But no, I was thrilled to death to the match with Mike. He was complete professional, easy to work with, and I enjoyed it, which is why, and again, some people don't know this, we originally agreed to doing a 2-match thing. I worked with him in Florida and put him over, and then he was going to return the favor in Toronto. And I contacted Jimmy, and it's like, again, out of respect for Mike, especially because he was good and a pro and really easy to work with, I'm like, I don't want to get the last win on this one. Can we do a third? And so I came down and put him over on TV because, again, I think he's far more the future of this business than I am. I'm on the way out. He's on the way up. So, give him the lift that you can. And I enjoyed doing that. I've done it with Chris Hero as well. But nothing on the horizon. Actually just got an email.
That's the way that it's supposed to be done. And that's why I was so happy to have you come in, because not only do the guys that you work with in a situation like that learn something, but also the locker room learns something by that because they see a good example. They've all had the the experience where they go to a big independent show and they have to put some name over and they don't take the time and et cetera, et cetera. So when you can have an entire locker room see somebody do things the right way, that was a big boost for the entire talent roster, in that situation. And the smart fans, they were all over Mike Bennett when we first started using Mike 3 or 4 years ago in Ring of Honor. Oh, he's not Ring of Honor material. He doesn't do these flips and he doesn't do this and that. And it was another example of seeing, yes, this guy has potential. He's not a main event talent now, but he's going to be if he develops as we think he will in 3 to 5 years. And we should start trying to invest in him and bring him along and not just treat him like, a doormat to have somebody wipe their feet on him, because he's going to grow into that spot. And that was, a plan that we had with Mike. It was a plan we had with a lot of guys, and guys like you and Rhino and Jerry Lynn coming in to work with guys like that were just such a positive direction for everybody.
Well, thank you.
And that's probably, my God, Alice, is that the longest string of compliments I've ever given anybody on the program here? I'm usually pissed at people, but
you were so sweet and verbose. It was beautiful. I almost don't know this man.
I feel like you need to call me a stupid bumblefuck or something just to round it off.
Well, you stupid bumblefuck! What do you do?
That feels better.
Somebody get Gerbil over here and